Hello, my dear students. I welcome you to the English class. Today, we'll be covering another lesson from your English reader book. This lesson is lesson number 10, The Quarrel. The lesson highlights the importance of family relationships, love, care, and affection. This lesson has been taken from a very famous novel called Little Woman, which is written by Louisa May Alcott. This American author had written this novel to earn money, but she never knew that this would become such a huge success and also a famous classic novel for children. So, this part of the novel has been presented to you in the form of a play in which there are four scenes. All of them take place in different locations. Let's take a look at the characters in this play. We have Mrs. March, the mother of March sisters. Among the March sisters, we have Jo, Meg, Beth, and Amy from eldest to youngest. Laurie is their neighbor and friend. Students, before starting with the play, let us read this short poem by Isaac Watts. Whatever prowls disturb the street, there should be peace at home. Where sisters dwell and brothers meet, quarrels should never come. Birds in the little nest agree, and this a shameful sight, when children of one family fall out and chide and fight. Now, this is a really beautiful poem that gives us such a nice message. What the poet says here: whatever prowls disturb the street. Prowls means a noisy fight, which is usually a common sight nowadays. We see people fighting with each other on the roadside, in the localities, in the streets. So, what the poet says, that whatever kind of fight is going on in the area that you're living in, but there should be peace at home. That in the family, all the family members must live happily with each other. Where sisters dwell and brothers meet, quarrels should never come. What he says next, that in a place where sisters and brothers are living with each other, no sort of arguments, no sort of disputes and fights should ever take place. Birds in their little nest agree. What he says, that like in a little nest, all the birds live happily together, right? They all sing together, eat together, sleep together, they all are very happy. So, same way, all the kids in a family, all the siblings in a family must live happily with each other without any arguments, without any fights. And this a shameful sight, when children of one family fall out and chide and fight. Now, what the poet says, that it is such a shameful sight. How shameful it is that all the siblings in a family are fighting with each other, they're scolding each other, sometimes seen punching and kicking each other. This is something you can easily relate to, right? Because you also fight with your brothers and sisters. So, see how embarrassing it can be to your parents, right? This is really not good, that you fight with your siblings, you fight with your elder or younger sisters and brothers. So, keeping in mind the lesson of harmony and peace that Isaac Watts has given us, let us begin with the lesson. The scene 1 begins on a Saturday afternoon. It is a lovely day. The narrator tells us that the March sisters, Meg and Jo, are in their room getting ready to go out when their younger sister, Amy, walks in. So, what we see in the scene 1, that the March sisters, Meg and Jo, they are getting ready and they're going out somewhere. Now, the youngest sister, Amy, walks in the room, and as she enters, what happens? There is an air of secrecy around Meg and Jo, which makes little Amy very curious. Now, as she enters, Meg and Jo act like nervous and as if there is some secret going on in between them. Seeing this, Amy gets curious. She wants to know what is happening. So Amy asks them, "Girls, where are you going?" she knows that for sure they are going somewhere. So she asks them directly. To which Joe replies very sharply. She says, "Never you mind." That means Joe is really not interested in telling her where are they going. Now that Joe has clearly refused to answer her anything, Amy turns to Meg and asks her, "Do tell me. I should think you might let me go too, for I haven't got anything to do and I'm so lonely." Amy then tries to convince Meg that she's got nothing to do, she's feeling lonely, so yes, she would also like to come along with them. To which Meg says, "I can't, dear, because you aren't invited." Before Meg could complete herself, Joe cuts in impatiently and interferes, saying, "You can't go, Amy, so don't be a baby and whine about it." What she says? She clearly refuses that, "Amy, you cannot go with us, so please don't act like a child and stop complaining about it." Now Amy gets adamant, and what she says? "You're going somewhere with Laurie. I know you are. I know. You're going to the theatre to see the Seven Castles. It was mean not to tell me in time. I shall go too." So Amy already knew that they are going out with Laurie to watch the drama called The Seven Castles. So she blames them for not informing on time so that she could not join them. And then she asked them to take her also along with them. Hearing this, Joe gets really angry, and what she says? "You can't, because our seats are reserved, and it isn't proper to poke yourself where you aren't invited. Just stay where you are." Joe clearly refuses her, saying that their seats are already reserved. Plus, she says that it is not a good habit to poke yourself where you aren't invited. Poke yourself means to involve yourself in a place, in a situation, or a conversation where you are not invited. So, what she says that we do not want you, we have not invited you, so you should not come with us. So, just stay where you are. And then begins the drama of the youngest kid in any family. Amy sits down on the floor and begins to cry. So, what does Amy do? Like a little baby, she sits down on the floor and starts crying, indicating that she won't stop crying until and unless they take her also to the theatre. At that moment, Laurie calls from the door. The two girls start to exit the stage, leaving their sister wailing. Laurie calls them from the door as they had to go to the theatre. So Meg and Joe are about to leave the room, and they do not care whether Amy is still crying or she has stopped crying. They exit from the stage, and Amy keeps on crying. What Amy says? "You'll be sorry for this, Joe March. See if you aren't." Now, seeing such a careless attitude of Meg and Joe, Amy gets really furious. She gets revengeful and warns Joe March that you will have to pay for this. You will feel sorry about it. You are not taking me along with you. You will feel sorry about it. To which Joe starts laughing and says, "Fiddlesticks." Fiddlesticks means nonsense. Keep on saying whatever you want to say. I'm not listening to you. And here ends scene number 1. Now, in scene 2, the narrator says, "The girls have a lovely time at the play, but in spite of that, Joe's pleasure has a drop of bitterness in it. The Fairy Queen's yellow curls remind her of Amy and the little fight. Joe has always had a hard time controlling her fiery temper, but her anger never lasts long and she soon starts to repent." Now the narrator tells us that the girls are having a great time in the theatre, they are enjoying the play, but even after such a great enjoyment, Jo is not feeling happy at all. She is feeling a little bitter. Why? Because the character of the Fairy Queen in the play, she has yellow curls, and these yellow curls remind her of Amy, because Amy also has golden hair and she is also having those golden curls like her, the fairy queen. And then she starts recalling the fight she had with Amy. And then narrator tells us that Jo is a short-tempered girl. She gets angry very soon, but her anger does not last for long. She soon starts feeling guilty about it. She starts feeling sad about it. She does not like when she gets angry. So she's missing Amy now. When Jo and Meg get home, Amy is sitting in the parlor, reading. She never lifts her eyes from the book and asks a single question. The next day, Meg, Beth, and Amy are sitting together in the parlor. Jo runs into the room. So, what happens next? That when Meg and Jo come back to their home after uh, their theater time, Amy does not talk to them at all. She was reading, sitting in the parlor. Parlor is a place, a sitting area in a house. So when they come back, Amy is sitting there. She's reading, but she does not lift her eyes. She does not even ask them a single question as how was the play, did you enjoy it or not, or I'm angry with you. She does not even say a single word. And that's how their day passed. The next morning, when Meg, Beth, and Amy were sitting in the parlor, Jo comes into the room where they were sitting. When she enters the room, she's panting. She's out of breath as if she had been running from a long time. What she asked, has anyone taken my book? To which Meg and both reply immediately, no. Now Jo turns to Amy and says, Amy, you have got it. To which Amy says, no, I haven't. She clearly refuses that she has not taken any of her book. To which Jo replies, you know where it is then. What she says? That I know. If you have not taken it, you surely know where my book is. Now Amy says what? No, I don't. Then again she refuses that I don't have any idea about where your book is. Now Jo holds Amy by the shoulder and says, that's a lie. She knew that Amy was lying. So she blames her that you're lying to me. To which Amy replies excitedly, scold as much as you like. You'll never see your silly old book again. I burned it. Now, what Amy says? No matter how much you scold me, do say whatever you want to say. But now you will never see that book again because I have already burned it. Jo gets shocked as she hears this. What? And then she begins to cry. You wicked, wicked girl. I can never write it again. I'll never forgive you as long as I live. Now Jo starts crying. She's hurt. And what she says? Are you fool? She calls Amy a wicked girl, for she had burned her book. She had written all of it by herself. And what she says? That she would never forgive her for what she had done. Jo was really hurt. And then she runs away from there crying. And then enters Mrs. March, mother of March sisters. And she hears the entire story, whatever happened. After hearing the entire story, Mrs. March said gently. Gently means very softly. What she said? What you did was very wrong, Amy. The book had only half a dozen little fairy tales, but Jo had worked over them patiently. She had put her whole heart into writing each of the stories. You must apologize to her. What Mrs. March does? She tries to make Amy realize her mistake, that whatever she had done was really wrong. Though the book had a number of fairy tales, but all of the fairy tales were written by Jo herself. She had given her whole heart to that writing. That means she had given her entire time and she had given her entire dedication while writing those stories. What Mrs. March does? She asked Amy to say sorry to Jo because whatever she had done was really wrong. Now Amy starts feeling sorry about it. She is truly sorry, and what she says, "You're right, mother, I will." Now she's feeling guilty about whatever she had done just because of a small fight issue. She had burnt her entire hard work. So she is now feeling guilty about it, and she says that yes, I will go to Jo and I'll say her sorry. At tea time, Jo comes down to the dining room looking grim. It takes all of Amy's courage to walk up to her. Now it is the evening time, they all are having their tea when Jo comes down from her room and she's looking grim. Grim means she's very serious. She's still sad over the burning of the book. Now Amy takes all her courage. She finds the strength to stand up and walk up to Jo. She walks towards Jo and says, "Please forgive me, Jo. I'm very, very sorry." Now Amy is really feeling guilty and she apologized to Jo. But as we already know, Jo is a short tempered girl. She is not able to control her anger easily, so she is not even moved by the apologies of Amy. She is so hurt and she is still sad about the burning of the book. So she is still fixed, and what she replies strictly, "I shall never forgive you. You don't know how much you have hurt me." What she says to Amy, that "I can never forgive you for what you have done. This has hurt me a lot, so I cannot forgive you." Jo quickly takes her tea from the dining table and marches out of the room, not looking at Amy. Now Jo does what? She just picks her tea from the dining table and walks straight out of the room. She does not look at Amy at all, not bothered by her apologies and her guilty face. In the scene 3, the narrator tells us Jo is still angry the next day. She can't stand the tension in the house and decides to go ice skating with Laurie. Amy runs after her. She wants to apologize and hopes Jo will be in a better mood after skating. At the river, Jo sees her coming and turns her back. So what does the narrator tell us? That Jo is still angry with Amy. Even the next morning, she can't stay in the house, for she knows that she would have to face Amy again and again. So what she decides, that she would go out with Laurie and go for ice skating. And then when Amy sees that she's going out, she decides to follow her because she was feeling guilty and she wanted to apologize her. So she decides that she would go after Jo, and she thinks that Jo will get better after ice skating, as she will feel refreshed and relaxed, so she might forgive her. Okay, so now at the riverside, Jo and Laurie are preparing to go for ice skating, and Jo also notices Amy following her, that she is coming after her, but she ignores her completely. She turns her back and go ahead with Laurie. Now Jo asked Laurie, "Is the ice thick enough for skating?" So as they're preparing for ice skating, Jo asked Laurie that if they're going for skating, is the ice thick enough? Otherwise they would drown in the river. To that, Laurie replies, "It isn't safe in the middle. Keep near the shore. Come, let's race." So what Laurie replies, that it is not safe in the middle as the ice is not thick enough. So what he suggests, that they should skate on the edges only. So they start racing then. Jo and Laurie skate away, zigzagging down the river. Amy is struggling to put her skates on and has not heard Laurie's warning about the ice. Now Jo and Laurie skate away. They start skating and then they are going ahead, zigzagging down the river. Zigzagging means not straight forward but making a Z way along the river. But Amy is still struggling with putting her skates on, and she has no clue about the thin layer of ice in the middle of the river. She has not heard what Laurie has warned about, so she is preparing to follow Joe. Laurie soon vanishes round the bend of the river. Joe is just about to turn when she sees Amy skating towards the middle of the river. All at once, there's a crash of ice, a splash of water, and a cry as Amy throws up her hands and goes down. So, as Laurie was skating at a greater speed than Joe, he bends, he takes a turns along with the bend of the river. But as Joe was about to follow him and take the turn, what she sees looking back, that Amy was about to skate towards the middle of the river where the layer of the ice was really thin and she could drown in that. So before she could react, before she could even warn her, what she sees, all at once there is a crash of ice. What she sees, that the layer of ice cracks down, a splash of water, a large amount of water comes out, and a cry. And whose cry it was? It was Amy's cry. As Amy throws up her hands and goes down. Now what she sees, that all of a sudden Amy, the layer of the ice cracks down. Amy goes down in the river. Her hands are up and she's crying for help. Jo tries to rush forward, but her feet seem to have no strength in them. For a second, she stands motionless. She stares at the little hood above the water with fear in her heart. Laurie rushes swiftly past her towards the crack in the ice. Now, when Jo sees Amy drowning in the river, she tries to move further to rush towards Amy to get her out of the river, but she is absolutely shocked. She is helpless. She is nervous. She's feeling, she's full of fear now. And even when she wants to help Amy, she is finding no strength in her feet to move even a foot further. For a second, she stands motionless. She's helpless completely. She just stares at the little wood above the water with fear in her heart. She is filled with fear that what if Amy dies? What if Amy drowns? So she's just standing there motionless, not moving, and she's staring at the little cap that Amy was wearing. Now, as soon as Lowry notices Amy drowning in the river, he comes and rushes forward towards Amy to save her and pull her out from the river. Lowry says to Jo, "Bring a pole, quick, quick." Now, what he asked Jo to bring? He asked her to bring a pole so that they could take her out of the river. Lowry is calm as he lies on the ice and holds Amy firmly by the arm. Jo drags a long pole from a fence nearby and holds it out to Amy. Together, she and Lowry get the child out. They carry her back home. Now, in such situation, Lowry is still calm because whenever we are in tension, we are in stress, we are not able to make wise decisions. But Amy had to be saved. So Lowry kept himself calm and composed. He lied down on the ice and just he held Amy strongly by her arms so that she could not drown. And then Jo brings a pole from a fence and together they pull her out of the river and then take her home. Now scene 4 takes place in the house of Marge's sisters. Later in the evening, Amy lies fast asleep, rolled up in warm blankets before a fire. Jo is pale and quiet as she watches Amy sleep. Now in the scene 4, what we see, that it is the time of evening. Amy is sleeping, rolled up in a warm blanket. Joe is sitting by her side. She's pale and quiet. Pale means she's still filled with fear, thinking if Amy is alright, or she is she okay or not. So she's still fearful, and that's why she's just sitting quietly. She's not saying anything. Right? She's concerned for Amy. As she watches Amy sleep, she's just looking at Amy and thinking about her good health. Now Joe is really concerned for Amy, and then thinking about her, she asked her mother, whispering. Whispering means saying something quietly, because she could not disturb Amy while sleeping. So she just whispers and asks her mother, "Are you sure she's still safe?" See how concerned she is for Amy? She is asking her mother if she is safe now, if she is out of danger now. So to that, Mrs. March replies cheerfully. She replies cheerfully so that Joe does not get worried again. So what she says, "Quite safe, dear. You were sensible in covering her up and getting her home quickly." You see, Mrs. March knew that somewhere Joe is blaming herself for Amy's condition. So she did not want her to feel guilty about it. So she somewhere tries to console Joe and then applauds her that you did a great job. You were sensible enough. You did a good thing that you covered her up and brought her home quickly. Hearing this, Joe suddenly starts crying, and while crying, what she says, "Lowry did it all. Mother, if Amy should die, it would be my fault. I did bother to make sure Amy had heard Lowry's warning about the eyes. It's my horrible temper. I try to cure it, but it always breaks out worse than ever." As Joe still believed that it was only because of her that Amy faced such situation, so when Mrs. March praised her for being sensible and saving her, she could not stop herself because she blames herself for Amy's condition. So she starts crying and says, "What? That it is only Lowry, because of him. Amy is safe now. He saved her." And she says that if anything happens to Amy, or if she dies, it would be only her fault, because she believes that it is only her carelessness because of which Amy faced such a situation. She did not care enough to even warn Amy about the river, about the danger of the river. She knew that Amy was following her. Even after that, she did not warn her, and that all happened because of her horrible temper. So she is blaming her temper again. She knows, she's aware of her fault. She knows that she is short tempered. She gets angry easily. She's not able to calm herself down. She gets furious over little things. So she is very well aware of that. And somewhere she thinks that it is only because of her short temper that she did not forgive Amy, and because of that, Amy drowned in the river. Further accepting her fault, she knows that she is short tempered. She accepts it, and what she says, that it's not that I do not work on my short temper, it's not that I'm not trying to control my anger, I always try to cure it. She starts explaining to her mother that I'm working on it, but I'm never able to control myself, and it only gets worse with the time. When Mrs. March sees that Joe is feeling guilty about her short temper, and she's blaming herself for Amy's condition, she consoles her, saying, "Never get tired of trying, dear, and never think it is impossible to conquer your faults, Joe." So, what we see, that Mrs. March is trying to understand Joe. She supports her completely, and what she further suggests her, that it's good that you're working on it, and you should never get tired of trying. Just try until you achieve your goal. She says that if you're working for it, just keep on working. Do not stop. Because it is never impossible. You see, there is nothing like impossible. So she says that if we know our faults, it is never impossible to work on them and to conquer them. We can win over our faults. But Jo is still feeling worried, she is still feeling guilty, and then what she says, "You don't know how bad it is. Oh, mother, do help me." So, what she says that she really feels bad because she is not able to work over her short temper, she is not able to control it on time. So, she is feeling guilty about it, and she asks her mother to help her in controlling herself, to help her in working over her short temper. Now Mrs. March says, "I will, my child." She assures her that she will help her in working over her short temper. And further she says, "Remember this day and promise yourself that you will do nothing like it again. We all have our faults, but we must try to improve, even if it takes all our lives." So what is she suggesting to Jo? That if you think that it is really your fault, then remember this day, learn from whatever happened today and start working over it. There is no use of crying over it again and again. So what she says, that remember this day and promise yourself that you will never do such kind of thing again, that you will learn from your mistakes and start working on them. And what she says, that we all have our faults, we are not perfect ones. Okay, all of us do some sort of mistakes, we all have some sort of imperfections, but the wisdom lies in working over them. The wisdom lies in improving our faults. We can always improve ourselves. There is always scope for betterment and a good living standard, a good morality. So she says that even if it takes all our lives, even if you have to work your entire life just to improve yourself, do not stop. Now Jo places her hand on Amy's head and strokes her hair softly, and what she says, "I went to sleep angry. I wouldn't forgive her. And today, if it hadn't been for Lowry, it might have been too late. I will never be so wicked again." So what she says, that it is my fault that I had thought of never forgiving Amy, and if Lowry hadn't saved her on time, it would have been too late. Amy could die. So she says that she would never be such a foolish girl again. She would never do such thing again, which could become problematic for others. So further narrator tells us, as if she heard, Amy opened her eyes and held out her arms with a smile that warmed Joe's heart. Neither said a word, but they hugged each other and forgot their anger with a kiss. Now, as Jo and Mrs. March were talking about Amy, and Jo was really feeling guilty about Amy's condition, suddenly, what happens? Amy wakes up as if she was hearing everything. She had heard all the conversations between them, so she just opened her eyes and held out her arms to gesture as if she wants to hug Jo. And this really warmed Joe's heart, as if Amy had forgiven Jo for whatever happened that day. So this really gave Jo a warm feeling. She also felt comfortable. Neither said a word. Both of them didn't even say a single word. They did not exchange any sort of conversation, but they just hugged each other. They just gave each other a warm hug and forgot their anger and kissed each other softly. You see, such a sister's love. One moment they were fighting, and the other moment they forgot all their anger and just hugged each other. So students, I really hope that you liked this story and must have understood the underlying message here. As we have reached the ending of the story, so what did we learn from the story? That there are ups and downs in every relationship. Sometimes we get angry with our loved ones and quarrel. However, it is important to forget one's differences and forgive each other, especially when the person is an important part of our life. So, students, I really hope that you like this story. If you have any sort of doubt, please watch the video again, go through it, and still, if you want to ask anything, please leave the message in WhatsApp group. We'll discuss about it. Thank you.